Okay, today we're discussing over here. Today's daf is Masechta Baba Basra, daf Kuf Lamed Aleph, 134, and let's make it big. We are discussing over here today the idea of what happens if a person's children is not kishura, is not behaving properly. So the question is, can you divert and disinherit them? That's the question. So the Gemara asks, "My hava Allah." What's the bottom line over here? So the answer is, surprise, is Tashma, coming here. The Amalei Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel said to Rabbi Yehuda, Loi Shinina, my sharp one, my sharp student, Loi Teheve Avura Achasanta. Don't yeah, basically live in a place or be part of a transaction where a father is disinheriting one son and giving the assets to another son. Even if he's taking it away from a a a bad son and giving it to a good son. The kolshkein, and certainly mibra levrata, from a son to a daughter. You shouldn't be in that type of transaction because it's not good. If you never know, even if you give over inheritance to a child that you don't like so much, you never know that maybe his offspring is going to be a tzaddik and he'll benefit from your assets. So we only see things for one generation. So it's not a good idea to transfer, to disinherit a kid. Toner Rabbanon, but that's not always the case. Ma'aseh ba'adam echad, there was a story about a person, Shloi hoya bonov noihagin kishura. His children were not behaving properly. Okay? Hi, Alan, we just began. Rabta Toner Rabbanon. Kuf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Toner Rabbanon. Ma'aseh ba'adam echad, there's a story about a person, Shloi hoya bonov noihagin kishura. His children were not behaving properly. Ahmad, he got up, V'kosav nechosav liYonasan ben Uziel, and he said, all my assets should go to Yonasan ben Uziel. Okay, he was a top student of Hillel. Ma also Yonasan ben Uziel. So what did he do? So the guy gave him all his possessions because he didn't want his son to inherit it. So what did Yonasan ben Uziel do? Machashlish, he sold a third of the assets and he kept the money. So Yonasan ben Uziel used the money. The Higdash shlish, and he made holy shlish. And he gave back his kids a third. He gave it back. After the guy died, he gave it back. So, Baal of Shammai b'makle v'tarmiloi. Shammai came with a stick and purse. Basically, Shammai argued with Yonis ben Uziel, you're not following the instructions. The instructions was implied. It wasn't specific that the guy is giving you all his possessions after he dies because he doesn't want his kids to inherit, and you go ahead and return some of the assets to his kids, a third of the assets to his kids, comes out you're not following the direction, so you have to return everything. You have to get it back from the kids, or you owe the estate money or something. You're doing something wrong. Amalei. So Yonis ben Uziel responded to Shammai, Shammai, imati yochel lahoitzi es mashe becharti mashikdashti. Whatever I sold and kept for myself, or what I made holy to the Beis Hamikdash, right? That you agree is okay. You can't take that back. If you could take that back, you could take back what I returned to the kids. Im lav, if you can't, you cannot take back from what you cannot take back what I returned to the kids. In other words, just like you agree that whatever I did with the assets that was not related to returning it to the children is good, so also, you cannot take back, and so also whatever I return to the kids, that's also okay. I don't have to take that back. Now, the reason why Yonis ben Uziel was correct over here, because the guy didn't specifically say that I'm giving it to Yonis ben Uziel on condition that you don't give it back to my kids. He just wrote it. He was so upset with his kids, he died angry, and he gave it to Yonis ben Uziel. So Yonis ben Uziel did what he thought would be the proper thing, is not to keep the money, but return to the kids a third of the assets. And Shammai wasn't sure. Amar, but Shammai said, Hitiach alai ben Uziel, Hitiach alai ben Uziel. He was victory. Ben Uziel had victory over me. Ben Uziel had victory over me. So that was the story about Yonasim Ben Uziel. So the Gemara, my Kara, my Sava, the Gemara concludes, why did Beishamai think that Yonasim Ben Uziel is doing something wrong? And says the Gemara, Mishum Maisa the Beis Chayrim, because there's a story that happened in Beis Chayrim that sometimes if you don't follow the condition, then the whole thing is retroactively no good. That's now we learned in the Mishnah. Ma'aseh bebeis chayrin. There's a story that happened in Beis Chayrin. Be'echad, and a person. It's fascinating thing. Shaya aviv muda hanam mimenu. He had his father was in a fight with him, and his father made a neder that his father is not allowed to benefit from him. So a son like Aserd on his father all his possessions. Now he's making a chasana for his son, and he wants his father to come to the grandson's chasana, but but he's paying for it. So how is he going to allow his father to come, who has iser neder on and not to benefit from his own son? So what he did was, so he told his friend, I'm giving you, I'm paying for the meal, I'm paying for the hall, and that's a gift for you. So it's as if you're making the wedding, and therefore we can invite your father. I'm only doing this, so unless my father could come, and now my father will be able to enjoy the meal. So this friend didn't like this idea. He felt he's helping something underhanded over here. So he said to him, Im shalihain, if they're mine, harei hein mikdashin l'shamayim. If it's mine, I'm giving it away to heaven. Okay, it's mukdash l'shamayim. It's giving away to heaven. So I'm making it hegdish. So now nobody can benefit from the chasana. Amalai. So the guy said, I didn't gift it to you. I didn't give it to you that you should now make it hegdish. I gave it to you so we can have a chasana. I can invite my father. Amalai. So the guy said, you didn't give it to me. You only gave it to me on condition that you and your father should be able to come and eat by this wedding and have a good time and appease each other, have a good make up with each other. But it comes out, but this is not a subterfuge. This is an underhanded gift, and really they oven tali b'roshi, and it's going to be my avera that your father is going to benefit from the meal because it's not really mine, because you're only giving it to me on the condition that to invite your father. So that's a funny condition, and you don't give me permission. You don't say, oh, it's totally mine that I can make it hegdish. And Amru Chachamim said, Kol matana she'ina higdisha mukdasha, any gift that you have no right to make it hegdish. Someone gives you a gift, but you can't do whatever you want with it. Ain't a matana. It's not a matana. So Shammai held like what the Chachamim said, and therefore, because in this case it's not a gift, and the guy was right. He said this is an underhanded way to get your father to come to the wedding. So Shammai said that maybe Yonis ben Uziel acted improperly by returning the money when it was understood that the guy who died did not want the money returned to his kids. He just wanted Yonis ben Uziel to keep it. He wanted to disinherit his kids. But there's a big difference, because in the case of the meal in Mishnayos, in Beis Chora, the guy specifically said, I'm only giving it to you so that my father could come to the chasana. But in the place where the person died, it wasn't specific. He just gave it all to Yonis ben Uziel without saying why he's doing it. It was understood that he's doing it because he wanted to disinherit one kid. So Yonis ben Uziel was correct and said, listen, I can do what I want with it. It's mine. And therefore, I can, if I decide to return it to the kids, that has nothing to do with not following instructions. It was completely, totally Yonis ben Uziel's discretion, and he did the right thing. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Shmainim Tamidim Hoyelele Hillel Azakin. Hillel Azakin had 80 students. Shloishim Mehem, 30 of them, Ru'uyin Shetishra Aleim Shchina K'mosh Rabbeinu. 30 of them were so great that if the generation was worthy of it, they could have had the presence of God rest on them like Moshe Rabbeinu. Shloishim mehem, 30 of them, ru'uyin sh'tamid lehem chama ki Yeshua ben Nun. 30 mehem were as strong as Yeshua ben Nun. And one of the hallmarks of Yeshua ben Nun is that he stopped the sun. So 30 of them were like Moshe Rabbeinu. 30 of them were like Yeshua. Esrim, 20 of them, Bainanim, were in between. Were somewhere were like in between, Bainanim, like not as great as Moshe Rabbeinu and Yeshua ben Nun, but very high up there. How the Gemara is going to describe what is the smallest of his Talmidim. Gadol shebakulam, the smallest of his Talmidim, were Yonis ben Azil. Yonis ben Azil was the greatest student of Hillel. Cotton shebakulam, but the smallest one is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Smallest one was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Now, okay, I just want to get the page. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Amra Olav Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He's the smallest student of Hillel HaZakkai. And what was so great about Yochanan ben Zakkai? Shaliniach Mikra u'Mishnah. He did not. There was not a piece of the Tanakh, Mishnayos, Talmud, Halachos, V'Agodos, Dikdukei Torah. In other words, he learned. He knew everything, any possible wisdom and intelligence he knew, and especially through the Torah. He knew Dikdukei Torah, how to darshan every word of the Torah, the Dikdukei Seifrim, and everything of that has to do with the rabbis' gezeres, the Kal V'Chamurin and the Kal V'Chaimis, Gezeres Shavis, Utukufos. He knew astronomy, the Gematrios, and Gematrios, where certain parts of the Torah teach us halachas based on the numerical value of the word. Umishlis kaifsem, umishlis shu'alim, like Kabbalah things. That's the stories of the washers and the stories of the foxes. These are probably Kabbalah things which have to do with things we don't understand. Sichas Shedim, he understood the conversation of Shedim, or Sichas Dekolim, or conversations of the date trees, the Sichas Malachi Asharis, and the conversations of the Malachim, the angels. And he also knew very well Davar Gadol, the great thing, V'Davar Katan, and the small thing. Davar Gadol, what's the great thing he knew? Ma'aseh Merkava, the story of the chariot of God, which is brought in Yecheskel. V'Davar Katan, he knew every small Havayis Dabai Rava, any question Abai and Rava asked in the Gemara. So how did he know? Even if you would spend a million lifetimes, he wouldn't be able to know all this. But he had a special siyata d'shmai that it all somehow entered his brain. The Kaim Ashnema, this keeps what the pasuk says. L'hanchil oyav yesh v'yitzurseim amalei. To my loved ones, I'm going to give them something, and I'm going to fill their storage houses. So now, the cotton shebekulam came. So the smallest of Hillel's Talmidim was this way, that they knew everything. Gadol shebekulam, the greatest of his Talmidim, alachas kama v'kama, certainly knew all this. So Yonis ben Azil is the greatest Talmud, and Yochanan ben Zakkai is the smallest Talmud. Amru olav al Yonis ben Azil, it was said about Yonis ben Azil, b'sha'a sheyoshev ha'oseh Torah, when he would learn Torah. So my angels would want to come down from heaven to hear his learning. So kol oif shepareach alav, if there was a bird flying over his head, Nisraf got burnt. Apparently, maybe he learned outdoors. But what you do see is that Yonis ben Azil was something extraordinary. Says the Mishnah, Ha'omer, somebody says, Zebani, this is my son. Why would he say Zebani? Because he wants to give him a Yerusha. Or by saying, we don't know he has a son. Okay, we have a guy who's married, and he comes to us and says, this boy is my son. So by doing so, basically that son inherits him. And he's also saying testimony, a father saying testimony that he has a son, and therefore if he would die, his wife will not fall to Yibam. So he's believed by saying that. Ze'achi, but if he says, this is my brother, and therefore my wife should fall to Yibam, let's say we know he has no brothers, and all of a sudden he comes along and says, oh, I have a brother, and then he dies, he ain't an emu, he's not believed, the wife will not fall to Yibam. So we'll see about that. Now, let's say he said another thing, he had one brother, and now he says, oh, I believe we have a third brother, but it was only him saying that. In other words, one of the brothers, let's say there's five brothers, and one brother says, oh, we have a sixth brother. So that brother is not believed because by saying he has a sixth brother, yeah, maybe he could be believed, but he's causing a detriment to the other brothers because now the inheritance is going to be split with an extra brother. So therefore, he's not believed to for that guy to inherit. But he said, "This is my brother." So the one brother that said, "This person is my brother," he will have to share almost his Yerusha with that brother to try to make him have a part of the inheritance because you're one brother, and you're saying that this is your brother. So, okay, we'll split the assets according to the brothers that we know. But since you claim there's another brother, so you're going to have to share your inheritance with that extra brother that you believe he's a brother too. Mace, if that brother, if that, a so-called brother, the newfound brother dies, so then the assets, his assets go back to the brother that claimed that he was the brother because it was only through him that he got the assets in the first place. But naflu loy nechosim mimokom achar. Let's say this newfound brother had, made income from somewhere else. So then, when he dies, yishu echavimoy, all the brothers that were part of this family inherit. So, in other words, so they gain, but they don't lose. All the rest of the brothers gain, but they don't lose if because of this newfound brother. We'll see more about that in the Gemara. Let's just start with the first thing. A man comes along. We know he's married, and he says Zebani Neman. So we believe him. This is my son. He's believed. So the Gemara says the Ma'hilchasa. What halachic ramifications is this talking about? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says Li Yarshai. Now this boy inherits him. And veliftoy es ishtem in a yibam. And now his wife doesn't have to fall to yibam if he dies because he claims he has a son. So now we go to Kuf Lamed Daled Amabei. So says the Gemara, the Yershai, to inherit Pshita, of course, a person is believed to say that this is my son because for that person, even if he's a stranger, you can gift him all your assets if you wanted to. You don't have to. You can bypass this whole Yerusha business. Yerusha is only if you don't say anything, so you die. Then it goes to the inheritors. But if the guy says, "I'm gifting everything after I die to somebody else," he can do that. So certainly he would be believed by saying that this is my son. And says the Gemara, "Liftoyes ishtem and yibam istrachalei." I need the chiddush of let's see who said this, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, to teach you that a person is believed to pater his wife from falling to yibam. Why? So because now through his son, his wife will not fall to yibam. Says the Gemara, Hanami Tanina. This is a Mishnah too. Misha Amar B'Shas Misasai. Anybody who says when he dies, Yeshli Banim, I have sons. This is a Mishnah. I have sons. Neman, he's believed. Yeshli Achim, if he says I have brothers, Ein Neman, he's not believed because if he says I have sons and my wife does not fall to yibam, he's believed. If he says I have brothers and now my wife does fall to yibam, Ein Neman, he's not believed. So this is an open Mishnah. So what is the chiddush of Yehuda Amar Shmuel explaining our Mishnah? And says the Gemara, Hasam over there, the like Muchsek Lamba'ach. Here, when a guy says I have children, it's talking about we don't know if he has a brother. We don't know if the man has a brother. So if he says he has kids, so anyway, based on what we know, there's nobody to fall to yibam to. So even if he says I have sons, he's not causing anything different than what our assumption is, that this woman will not fall to yibam. But our Mishnah teaches you even more, extends it more, that afagav the muchsek lebaach, even though we know for sure that this man has a brother, and based on what we know, his wife would fall to yibam. If he comes along and says, "This is my son, and therefore my wife should not fall to yibam," and we don't know anything about this is his son, he is believed. So basically, that's the story. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yosef and Rav Yehuda Mishmul says, why did they say Zebani Ne'amon? Why did they say that if somebody says, this is my son, he is believed? Why did Chachamim say such a thing? Why? Where do you get that power? Says the Gemara says, Hoyel ubal she'ama grashtis ishi neman. Since a person, if he didn't want his wife to fall to yibam, if he would have said, I divorced my wife, Neman, he's believed. So therefore, he can say, "This is my son as well." So that's the point. Amar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef says, "Married Avram." Here's a Daf Yomi coincidence. We're talking about Yom. Oh my God, Avram, the God of Avram. Tali Tanya, but Tanya. You're saying something of a Mishnah that's hinged on something that's not a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Zebani, if you say, "This is my son," you're believed. And what's the reason? Because you're believed to say, "Garashtis Ishti." But there's no Mishnah that says a person is believed, Garashtis Ishti. Where do you see that if a person says, "I divorced my wife," and we never heard he divorced his wife, he's believed? Ella, itmar hachi itmar. This is the following. If we learn something, we learned the following. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, why did they say, Zabani Naman? Why did they say if someone says, "This is my son," he's believed? Why did they say such a thing? Because since he has the power to divorce her, since he has the power to divorce her right now, not that he would, if he said he divorced her, he's believed, but he could do it right now. That's why, and pater her from Yibam. So if he says Zebani, he's believed. If he says, "This is my son," he's believed. Because right now he could pater her from Yibam very easily by just writing the divorce right now. Rav Yosef said, Hasha de Amrit Hoyel, since you said that you believe a person by saying Zebani, because he has the power to divorce her right this minute, if he would say, Baal Sha'ama, we're going to extend it even further. If a husband says, Girashti is Ishti, Naaman, Hoyel Biyade Lagarsha. If a person says, "I divorced my wife," we never heard about him going to a Bezdin to divorce his wife, but he's believed because he could do it right now. So you believe him if he said it happened. He also Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan, when Rabbi Yitzchak said, and then it came in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he said, "Baal she'ama garashis ishti eino neman." If a husband says, "I divorced my wife," he's not believed. We only believe, we can't believe it. We'll ask him which Bezdin, where, what. We didn't hear about it. So Rabbi Yochanan disagreed. He said he's not believed. So because if it was true, we would have heard about it. And therefore, min apeach Rav Sheshes bidei, Rav Sheshes blew with his hands as if you blow a piece of dust or straw out of your hand. Ozalei hayel Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, who said that if a person says Gerashtis Ishti Neman, you are believed. Here's Rav Yosef. We blew him out of the water because he said Hoyel Biyodei Lagashi, you believe because you could divorce her right now. But Rabbi Yochanan doesn't disagree throughout that svara. That doesn't make sense. So Rabbi Yochanan disagreed with Rabbi Yosef. And a person says, "I divorced my wife," he's not believed. Aini, so that's not true. Did Rabbi Yochanan said you're not believed? Rabbi Yochanan, Baal she'oma garashti is ishti. If a man says, "I divorced my wife," Naaman, he is believed. So what did Rabbi Yochanan say? Ain't Naaman, you're not believed, or are believed? So like Kasha, it's not difficult. Kan lemafreya, kan lahaba. See, why would a person say, "I divorced my wife"? Because let's say it's Ear time, right? And you say a person says he divorced his wife, and we know he says he divorced his wife in the beginning of Nisan. And during Nisan, we found out that she was Mazana. So basically, by him saying that he divorced his wife prior to the Znus, he's basically saving her the death penalty. In that case, he's not believed. If you're going retroactively and you want to believe him retroactively to save her from the death penalty, then he's not believed. Kan lahaba. But when he says, "I divorced my wife," and if she would now be Mizana, then she wouldn't get the death penalty, then we would believe. So if we're going retroactively and we're trying to, predate the divorce from the Zanus, so then he's not believed. But in the future, if he says, "I divorced my wife," and now from here on in, if she would be Mazana with someone, we would believe him, and she wouldn't get the death penalty. So backwards, he's not believed, and in the future, a person says, "I divorced my wife," he is believed. And that resolves the contradiction of Rabbi Yochanan to Rabbi Yochanan, where one Talmud says, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Not believed," and one place he said, "You are believed." Another minute, Ibailu, so the Gemara asked a question. Amal lemafreya, mahul hemne lahaba. Me palginin deburai, I like palginin. If he said, he said it that it happened backwards, will you divide his future? Okay, you know what? We'll leave this for tomorrow. This is this question. We'll stop over here. It's a new topic over here, which will continue into tomorrow's stuff.
Thank you, Baruch.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, very
Have
good.
a good night. Have a great night.
Good night.